Good evening, everyone. Doug Burson, CPA, here again, and I've been getting a lot of questions from a lot of you on the second PPP. What is it? Do I qualify? And I've been meaning to cover it for a while now, but I got to get this done for you, so apologize for the delay, but here we go. I'm going to make this simple. I'm going to tell you who it's for, and if it's not for you, that way you don't waste your time, but if it is, I'm going to try to walk you through the whole process as fast as I can. So number one, who is the new PPP4, or as they're calling it, the second draw PPP? The second draw PPP is for those who have already taken one. Obviously, you got to have one if you're going to have a second, right? So you had to have already taken a PPP to start with. Number two, you have to have used it or will use it within the approved time. Now, for most of you, that's not a problem. For those of you who haven't, they've extended that, and I'll cover a little bit of that probably next week, but you still have time if you haven't used it, but I think for most of you, you already have. Number two, you can't have more than 300 employees, and that's going to cover most of you watching this video anyway, but you can't have more than 300 employees. And then the last part of the eligibility is you had to have had a reduction in revenue of more than 25% in one quarter of 2020 versus the same quarter of 2019. So if your business did just as well in 2020 and 2019, you're done. You don't qualify, you don't need to worry about this anymore. But if it didn't, now we got to do the math. And so what you're going to have to do is look at the first quarter of 2019, so January through March. Was that 25% more in revenue than in 2020? And we do that for each quarter, April, May, June, July, August, September, or October, November, December. We're allowed to look at all of them, but we only need one quarter to be 25% less in revenue. By revenue, that's most likely going to be your gross sales. It's not profit, it's your gross sales. There'll probably be more guidance coming out on this over the next week or two, but that's all they've said so far. So I'm going to assume it's going to be your gross sales, at least for now, until we learn more. Forgiveness. So as we found with the first PPP, it's going to qualify for full forgiveness. And I know that was a huge relief on the first one, and we're going to get the same treatment on the second one, and we're going to get the same 8 to 24 weeks. But the difference is when we get to the end, you know, we've used all the money, we don't have to keep going. It doesn't have to be a full 24 weeks. If it takes us 12 weeks and we've got it done, then we can go ahead and finish it and wrap it up and go ahead and apply for forgiveness and be done with it. We don't have to wait 24 weeks. And just like the first one, we have to use at least 60% for payroll. For most of you, that's what we're using it for anyway, right? And so it's pretty easy. There are other costs we can use it for, and we'll go over that a little bit when we're doing the application here in a minute. But really, for most of us, payroll is going to do it, so why complicate life? Third thing I want to talk about is the size of the loan. So if you remember, it was 2.5 times of your average payroll from the prior year. Now, they have said that you can do average payroll for 2020 or 2019. My guess is if you qualify for this program, it's probably going to be your 2019 numbers anyway, but you want to look and just make sure, because you could have had a really bad quarter and then really done well and had a lot of payroll in another quarter, so you got to at least look at it. But it's going to be most likely take your 2019 payroll and take the average and multiply it times 2.5, and that's going to be your loan, unless you're in one of the hospitality type industries such as restaurants or motels, and you know, because your business code will start with a 72. So NAICS code will be a 72, and we'll see that on the application as well. If that's the case, bonus, you get 3.5 times, so 3.5 times average payroll instead of 2.5 times. And I know for these industries, that's going to be good news, because it's been really, really tough for a lot of you, and hopefully that'll help out. Next thing I want to talk about is when can we apply? Well, it went live this week in the smaller banks, and by the first of next week, I believe all the banks that are participating will be eligible. So you can pretty much go anywhere, get your application in, and the bank's going to be able to process that for you. You can apply all the way through March 31st, so there's not a big hurry, but I'd get it done because I haven't heard that there's a fear of running out, but you don't want to take a chance. Go ahead and get in line and get it in there. If you're wanting us to help you with it, we'll be glad to, but it's probably going to be a couple of weeks because year end for us is very, very busy as we do a lot of W-2s, 1099s, financial statements, etc. So we're going to be real busy, but probably the 1st of February I can get somebody to help you if that's something you're going to need. So that takes care of that. That's the high level. At this point now, I'm going to switch gears. We're going to move over to my computer and I'll just walk you through the application. Okay, like I said, I'm going to show you how to do this as easily as I possibly can. So let's start at the treasury.gov website. Right there at the top says COVID-19. Click on that. Scroll down, Assistance for Small Business. Click on that. And there we are. Right down here is the second draw borrow application form. Click on that. And here we are. I'm going to go ahead and zoom this in for you guys a little bit. I'm only going to hit the stuff that I think we need to hit. A lot of this you already know. You should know what kind of entity you are. You should know your company name. Year of establishment, that one's a big deal because if you didn't exist before, I believe it was February 15th of 2020, you do not qualify for the first PPP and you don't qualify for the second PPP. That right there is going to take you out of it. So that matters. You have to have existed before that. You're going to know your company name, Naics code. That is important, especially if it starts with a 72 for your industry. That's going to be your restaurants. That's going to be your motels, things like that. As we talked about earlier, if it starts with a 72, you will qualify for 3.5 times, not 2.5 times. So you can type in NAICS on the internet, look up your industry and see if that's you. You can also look, or should be able to look, on your tax return, and your business code will be on there as well. You know how to do your business information, so we won't worry about that. Then the average monthly, this is where it's going to go 2.5 times the average amount. We already talked about that. If it's industry code 72, like it shows right here on the application, multiply it times 3.5. The loan cannot go over $2 million. If the loan is that big, you probably shouldn't be doing this yourself anyway. You should be getting help. Number of employees can't exceed 300. We've already talked about that. The purpose of the loan, for most of it's just going to be payroll. But there are some new categories that have come into this, such as covered property damage, and that's from things such as looting and rioting if your property was tore up due to those kinds of things. For most of us, payroll is going to cover it, but if that describes you, you may want to look into this a little further because maybe your business is closed and therefore until you can get it reopened because of the looting, that may help you cover the cost of the PPP loan. So just keep that in mind. That may be there for you. And there's other things, supplier costs, covered work protection. But once again, most of it's going to be payroll. If payroll loan doesn't do it, you can dig into that more, but I don't think that's going to be necessary for most. Then we get down here to the first draw loan number. You have to have the loan number from your first application, or your first loan, not application, but your first loan, because you can't get a second if you don't have a first, and we've already covered that. Now to this section. So this section, you have to say what quarter in 2020 you're comparing to what quarter in 2019. So if I'm going to compare the second quarter of 2020 to the second quarter of 19, that's where the 25% comes in. So if my revenue for the second quarter, that was April, May, and June of 2019 was $100,000, then in order to qualify for that quarter, my revenue would have to be below $75,000. Because remember, we had to have a 25% or more reduction in revenue for one quarter. Not every quarter, but at least one. And that's where they're going to track it. But if you look right here, you'll see it says applicants for loans of $150,000 or less can leave this blank. And the reason is they know a lot of you probably don't have your books complete and up to date yet, but you know if you were closed 2 months in the second quarter that your revenue was down 25%, right? And so what they're saying is if you know, you can go ahead and apply, but you're not going to be able to get forgiveness until you can show that it actually went down. So what I'm saying is don't take this for granted and do it just because they say you can. You better have it covered, because I don't know what the penalties are going to be if you lie on this. But we've seen stories all last summer where people were doing things they weren't and ended up on the news, and we don't want you or your business to have that issue. So make sure that it's 25%, because 24% won't get it done, right? You can't have, watch this, $75,001. You don't qualify, okay? So don't take this lightly. The owner name, I'm not going to worry about that. These questions you'll all understand. You just have to attest to these things, that you haven't been a felon. You can walk through this. We did this on the other loan. They're all basically the same, so I won't waste your time there. But down here, I did want to look at these. This is the one that you're basically saying, I'm giving you my word, bank and SBA, that my revenue was down by 25%. And even though my loan, I can't show you right now, it really did happen, and they're going to let them run this loan through based on your word. You're also saying, hey, I did get a first PPP and I am going to use it properly. If I haven't, I will have it done by the deadline. And then of course you have to say you're using it for the right things. And some of the new things are covered operating expenditures, property damage costs, supplier costs, work protection expenditures. So there's some new stuff in there that wasn't there for the PPP, but as I said, I think you're going to be fine under the just using the payroll alone. And of course, you can't get 2 second PPPs. It's not third PPP, it's second. So that'll do it. I think we've covered everything. I'd get on this, go ahead and get it submitted. It's pretty easy. You will have to do a lot more work to get the forgiveness, but go ahead and get the application in, get the money, and then we can do the work as long as you're sure. And I want to stress this, make sure that you are sure that it was at least 25% less than the prior year. That's it. Talk to you guys later.
Well, what a pile of